2025 wasn't a great year for electric vehicles. With the Trump administration eliminating the federal tax credit, it took a nice $7,500 chunk out of the budget of potential electric vehicle buyers. However, for electric vehicle charging, it's a different story. 2025 was actually a banner year for public fast charging. And I'm here today with Bill Ferro, who is co-founder and CTO of a company called Paren. Paren has probably more granular data about public electric vehicle charging in America than any other company. Now, if you're watch State of Charge, you may have seen Bill. I've had him on before. And I'm bringing him on here today because just today, Paren is releasing their 2025 annual report, State of the Industry. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to have Bill on to talk about that. We've got a ton of data. So if you're a EV charging geek, this might be a good video for you. Bill, welcome back to State of Charge. And listen, what are we going to talk about here today? Tell us a little bit about what Paren does and what we're going to talk about.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be back on. And yeah, apparently the charging companies did not get the message that EV sales were not going to be where they are. But it doesn't matter because they're not building for today. They're actually building for tomorrow and years from now. Anyways, thanks for having me on. I am a co-founder and CTO, as you said, of Paren. We are a EV charging data platform. So we have data from really the beginning to the end of the charging life cycle. And we know where all the stations are. We know everything about them. We know how they're being used. We know their pricing. We have all of this data together. What our platform really does is provides an API to our clients to be able to get access to this data in real time. That's not what this report is. What we do as sort of a free service to the industry is we take this data and on a quarterly basis, we put it together in a way that we think makes sense. We know many CEOs of charging companies leverage this report in order to use it in their day-to-day activities. And so this is something that we put out on a quarterly basis. This is the first time we have the full year in our report, and I'm happy to share some of the most interesting facts with you today.
Yeah, that's great. I knew just anecdotally from being around and talking to the infrastructure companies that this was probably a very good year for DC fast infrastructure. But until, got a quick look at your report, I didn't know how good. This has been a dynamic year for the industry, right? Maybe the best year ever?
It's phenomenal. It is actually the best year ever. And it's the best quarter ever. It's the best month ever, right? So each one of these metrics is just falling by the wayside to the activity that we're seeing in the industry, right? You've had a chance to meet with many of the CEOs in the various groups that are rolling out charging, and what they're up against. We all know what they're up against. They've managed to figure things out this year and get stuff done.
Okay. Well, let's get into it. Let's take a look at that report. I know you've got some slides picked out. It's a big, long report. We are going to put a link to Bill's website, Paren's website, where you can view the entire report, if you'd like, in the description of this video. But we picked out a few, I think, key slides that I think are going to really give us a real overview of that snapshot of what 2025 was like. So, Bill, why don't we take a look at your slides? Let's jump on here.
Sure. Let's start with this record deployment pace, right? So when we look at quarter over quarter and we look at year over year, actually Q4 of 2025 was 44% more ports deployed in Q4 2025 than Q4 2024. And Q4 2024 we thought was a phenomenal quarter. Mm-hmm. And so there's a typical lull. You talk to charging companies, and it's kind of hard to break ground or to finish activity in the wintertime. So a lot of the activity that we see towards new port energizing happens around, in Q2 through Q4. But this year in Q4, with over 5,700 ports deployed, we saw some things that we've never seen before. Like the average size of an installation of a station went from 3.8 to 4.5. Now, when you look at that over hundreds and hundreds of charging stations, that has a demonstrable impact, right? The number of stations that are over 8 ports now is double what it was last year. And again, as an EV driver, that's a phenomenal piece of information. When we look at this Q4 number here, as you know, you can see the bar obviously is higher than everyone else. If you break that down to month over month, October was the best month of the year. November was better than October. December was better than November. And you saw the push for the key players in the industry to get those stations energized and in place. And so much happened between December 20th and December 31st that it pushed this number over the top. And that literally was willing these stations into productivity.
Yeah, that nearly 1,000 stations was added in Q4. That's amazing. I would have guessed about half that much.
Right. And then when you break that down to the next level, so I'll jump to the next slide, right? Tesla still leads the market, right? Tesla, if you count the number of ports that they delivered over 6,700, it is more than the next 10 players combined. But what we're seeing is that their percentage share of the EV charging market is going down. So it used to be in the 60s, all time now it's in the 50s. For the last quarter, it was lower than 40%. Again, indicative of what's happening in the industry outside of Tesla. And effectively, what we're seeing is for companies like Ionda, Mercedes-Benz, BP Pulse, and to a lesser extent for 2025, Walmart, there's sort of a way to get this stuff done now, right? People have figured it out. And Tesla, of course, can just drop 4 ports and pretty much plug them in and walk away. But the other companies aren't that far behind in getting there and being able to push and accurately predict what they're going to deliver. And so we saw that. And you see that in these numbers, that in Mercedes-Benz, 50% more stations than we were targeted, than we thought they could get done. Ionda had about 40% more than we thought. They were optimistic. They met their goals. They did a fantastic job. But then you look at other kind of regional companies like Reddy is another good example of a company we don't talk enough about. They flood Michigan, which is their home state, with EV charging stations, but they've had contracts with Aldi now. They've deployed tons of charging stations at Ford dealerships, the whole Ford program where they made dealerships for a couple of days anyways, start to get charging. Well, once that momentum started, once that ball started rolling, it looks like most of those dealerships let it finish, right? And Ford Charge obviously was a big player there. Reddy was another big player in that space, and so all of that adds up. You know, we lost a few charging companies this year, and we're going to lose some more in 2026. But what we're seeing now is people who understand the market, have the data to know where to put these things. They can make money on most of what's being installed. And without any significant government funding, this industry is moving forward.
You started off talking about Tesla. It is something how they're just continuing to pedal to the metal, right? You know, I think a lot of people were concerned when Elon fired a big swath of the charging division, hired a lot of them back shortly thereafter, but he made a comment that, you know, we have the network now, we're just going to work on reliability at the time, and that led everybody to believe that they were going to pull back on new installations. That didn't happen.
There was a slight drop in 2024, right? Because they did lose some time and momentum there. They picked it back up in the end of 24. In 2025, they hit 6,700 ports, which is about 10%, 15% rather, more than what they did last year, which, you know, it's just, again, phenomenal activity in what they're delivering. And as we'll talk about in a minute, there's an opportunity with one of their new programs to have an even bigger impact.
Yeah, for sure. And you also mentioned that their percentage of the market share is dropping. Well, that had to happen because since 2012, when they really started installing superchargers to now, they were the dominant force, you know, and now we've got some significant players making progress. So of course that percentage is going to go down, but to still look at that total port number and how it dwarfs everything else, it just goes to show you how committed they are to really making this happen.
And again, I think as we go forward, there's opportunities for upgrades to pure V4 stations, right? The 500 volt architecture, if I have that correctly, or 1,000-volt architecture.
1,000-volt,
right.
600 amps.
Right. So there's a plenty of opportunity there, but there's also a tremendous amount of growth. But that's not stopping the other players from rolling out. When we all heard IONA say they're going to deliver 30,000 ports by 2030, we kind of all did the math and chuckled. I'm not chuckling anymore. They've got a real chance to get this done. Yeah. And then you look at potentially what Walmart can do in 2026. And what we expect they will do without having to deal with, all the land purchase agreements and all of that stuff that everyone else has to deal with.
I'm going to be talking with them in a couple of weeks. We have something set up to talk about their progress and what their outlooks for 2026. This should be a good year for them.
It should be. They have over 80 stations ready to be, in process right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just like with IONA, the first year they got like nothing done. And it's just getting organized. And I think that's where Walmart was last year. It was just kind of getting that ball rolling. But once the ball starts rolling, you see what IONA did in the last, 2 months is wild. Walmart has the potential to make it even to grow even faster than that because, they have all the sites, so it's going to be interesting to follow them.
It is actually going to be a fascinating story, I think, in 2026 as well. But before we jump into that a little bit more detail, let me talk about kind of what we're seeing and what's being deployed, right? So if you look at that Q4 stack of 2025, what stands out there is that 51% of the ports deployed were 250 kilowatts or higher, right? That includes the B3.5 superchargers. It includes all the 400 kilowatt stations that are going in across all the vendors that we've talked about. It includes a whole bunch of other dual 180s that are going in place from other vendors. And so all of that is really, I think, a shift in this industry, right? And you see that very clearly as you follow that gray bar from the beginning of 2025 to the end. That the industry is going to continue to blow out these superstations across the country.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that almost a quarter of them were under 150 kilowatt. That's a little surprising to me because I don't really know of any in this area, at least, that are under 150. I'm sure you could print out a list.
I can show you, but there still are these opportunity charging places, right? And a lot of it's municipal. Some of it is very small strip malls and things like that are putting in 2, maybe 3 stations. So yeah, there's some things going on there in the market. Kudos to the sales teams that are out there selling those and getting them installed. But the rest of the industry is moving forward.
I still think there's use case for lower speed DC fast, depending on the dwell time of where you are. And honestly, if the site just can't afford the expense of the really high speed charging.
And I agree. There's a lot of options out there. And that's really what I think that the site hosts are looking at. They have a lot of different options from a cost perspective, of speed, performance, everything. So
yeah, but it's great to see more than half of them installed are the 250 plus.
Good. So let's talk about one more infrastructure piece here, which is we actually did a prediction in 2025 that we thought there would be 16,700 new ports installed, and that was based on what we knew, who we knew, what information we got. We were blown away when that number came in just over 18,000. 18,040, I think, is the official number. And so we've tried to put our prediction hat on again for 2026 and take into account the things that we've been talking about, right? Walmart's ability to deploy quickly. IONA, what is now a proven ability to deploy. Mercedes-Benz as well. BP Pulse. The size of these stations that are being deployed are all in the 8 to 10 and larger sites. And let's not forget I'll call them legacy providers of EVgo and Electrify America, who also know how to get stations installed and know where to put them and how to make them money makers for them. So there's a lot of knowledge, I think, now in the industry across all these different groups that are going to roll out more chargers in 26 than 25. Is it going to be 30% more? I don't think so. I'm happy to be wrong, but I think that when you look at everything, as you start, you double from 2,500 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10,000, doubling from 10,000 to 20,000 is hard. So we're projecting a more modest increase of around 8%, but there are two key factors that we're looking at, right? One is Walmart, which we discussed. They could potentially roll out 150 sites at 10 each, which would blow away our number. The other one is this Tesla Supercharger for Business program. So what's not clear yet is Tesla going to slow down their deployment? Are they going to do less than 6,000 ports in 2026 and let the Supercharger for Business activity kind of fill in that gap? Or is it going to be additive, right? We know a lot of those teams that are interested in leveraging this Tesla product. And we've seen, actually, there was another station that went live this week in Wawa, at Wawa in Florida. And so these things are moving fairly quickly. And so it has an opportunity to potentially blow away our numbers and build out stations even faster.
Yeah, and it makes sense for like businesses, say like a Wawa, because they're already providing the parking area for the Teslas
Right.
and the Ionas and the companies that they partner with. Why not take ownership of the whole site? And Tesla manages the back end, does all the
Right.
billing, and they don't have to get involved with billing and even service and all that. They could just have a contract and deal with all that, and it's kind of like a win-win. So it makes a lot of sense that for both parties, for Tesla and for the third parties that are putting these on their locations.
It does. And it makes Wawa, in this case, an actual CPO.
Mhm.
If we look at it, right? They go from site host to CPO, and there's a different sets of activities that they have to deal with there. But again, they have the potential, they have the land to be able to control their own destiny.
That's what Walmart's doing.
Exactly.
They went from a site host to a CPO.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And the other thing here is when you start to look at the Tesla for Business activity, and a lot of this other activities, these small regional players are getting involved, and they know their market very well. When you look at the very first Tesla Supercharger for Business, Suncoast charger it went in Land O'Lakes, Florida, and that station did very well. It has done very well in the first 6 weeks, because the team there knew exactly what they were doing. And they have a bunch more stalls that they want to deploy throughout Florida, which needs more charging. And having local teams that understand the markets well, I think is going to pay dividends.
Okay.
And then we'll end on this slide, which is maybe a little bit complicated, but we wanted to kind of take our infrastructure data and take a look at our utilization data and try to understand what that is telling us, right? So we know Q4 has this very large deployment. And we also know, if you look at the farthest number here for December, the far right, that it actually is the busiest time of year. December is the busiest month. July and August together are busy, but nothing beats the charging activity that we see around the holidays. And so what this chart is showing is that in July and August, because the sessions per port, which is the purple line, because that number was really high in the summer, it meant that the infrastructure wasn't sufficient enough to support the volume. A lot more people charged, a lot more people, I think, took advantage of the fact that the network is growing, but it wasn't until December, until this blowout Q4, that we saw the actual sessions per port fall within the two lines that we have on this chart, which is what we're calling the Goldilocks range. Too low, CPOs aren't making money, infrastructure is going to fail, right? Because no one's there to maintain it. Too high, drivers are frustrated. So there's this Goldilocks range in the middle that we're monitoring and looking at. And we think we're in that right now, again, thanks to the blowout Q4 that occurred. That doesn't mean that every station sees this performance. But when you average it out over the 70,000 ports that we track across the US, this is what it looks like. And it's a fairly healthy view. And this is, again, something that we think that shocks most people that we talk to, because and you've been preaching this for years, that up until very recently, you really needed to be able to charge at home, right? If you wanted to own an EV and have a great experience, then you really need to be able to charge at home. And we're lucky enough to be able to do that. There are estimated 140 million public fast charging sessions in 2025 in the US. And that number is phenomenal, right? Given the number of vehicles that we have in operation. That tells us that rideshare usage is growing, that people are more comfortable with travel now with their EVs. There's more of these silly road trips happening from one end of the country to another. But that's, there's a lot of folks out there that are typically relying on that network on a day-to-day basis, and it's getting there. We think it's right in that sweet spot range right now.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is, even the people that can charge at home that may rarely use public charging infrastructure, and if you can charge at home and you buy most EVs today, I mean, I used to know what the average or the mean driving range for all new electric vehicles. It's got to be close to 300 miles at this point, is the average. And if you can charge at home, the vast majority of America is going to use a public charging infrastructure very infrequently. If every day you potentially leave with 300 miles of driving range, not a lot of people drive more than 300 miles in a day. So just when they're going on long trips. But the problem, as well, you understand as much as anybody is, if they don't feel comfortable on those rare times when they do need to go far, they won't buy the car, even if they can charge at home. And until it's so ubiquitous, in my opinion at least, until they're literally tripping over DC fast chargers in every parking lot they go in, people are still not going to realize that the chargers are there. Because, if you're not looking for one, you don't see it. And that's one of the things that I loved about the Walmart program. Not that I think a lot of people on road trips per se, but would select the Walmart location, unless it's perfectly located right on the highway. But so many people in America go to Walmart, on a weekly basis or bi-monthly basis. They'll be tripping over the chargers. They'll be driving by them. They won't not be able to see them. And that gets into your psyche that everywhere I go, I see these things now. And then once they recognize what they are in a Walmart parking lot and they see one somewhere else, they'll be like, oh yeah, they have chargers here too. So I think, we have to unnecessarily install so much infrastructure, I think, for many Americans to even consider an EV. Do you kind of feel that way, or?
I do feel that way. I think that, again, the Great American Road Trip can easily be made with today's infrastructure.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, we've got to make sure that infrastructure continues to grow. Even without federal incentives, EVs are still a good deal. From an ownership perspective, and as more people learn and understand that, we're going to see the vehicles in operation go from whatever number it is today, effectively doubling in the next, let's say, 5 years. We need to make sure that the infrastructure is keeping up with that. And that's why I think that last metric there, which shows that the infrastructure playing well with how the customers are using the network today. Is that happening? And it is right now. So how do we stay in that Goldilocks range?
Yeah. And I hope we hit your prediction of, I think it was 19,500 ports, something
19,
like that.
000,
yeah, that you're predicting this year. We could use another nearly 20,000 ports here in the US. I mean, the growth's been fantastic, even if, as we led off with talking about the fact that, the industry, the vehicles themselves may have taken a bit of a hit. We're in a little bit of a kind of a wait and see period right now with losing the federal tax credit. Some of the cars are being canceled by some of the manufacturers because without that tax credit, it kind of makes them a bad proposition. I mean, it's not that the industry's dying. I think we're going to have a good year selling EVs this year by the end of the year personally, but we'll see. I think once the sting of the tax credit goes away, the people are still going to realize these are still a great value and a good deal, but the infrastructure is key. And you staying on top of it is awesome, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. It's necessary to put these numbers out there and show people, look at what we have. This is really like EVs aren't dead. Nothing could be farther from the truth.
No, and the investment going in is not coming from fly-by-night companies. These are companies that are fully vested in having a proper solution out there. Right. One of the clients we were talking to says they're not building for 2027; they're building for 2035.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality that we need to have in this industry, which, arguably we haven't had before. So this is fantastic.
Yeah. When I talked to the founding partners of Iona, they all said the same thing, because some of them don't really have many offerings. Stellantis, Honda, some of them, really don't have their showrooms aren't filled with EVs. But they said, look, we need to put these chargers in the ground today, because we will be selling a lot of EVs in a few years. So, we don't want customers coming to the showroom and wondering where they are to charge. We want to get them all on the ground. So when we are really all in on EVs, the customers can make that decision without worrying about where to charge.
And we know who downloads our reports, and some of those OEMs who don't have a lot of EVs, use our report. So we're happy that they do that. Again, we put this out because we think it's a service to the industry. There's no price tag behind it. There's no requirement for anything other than give us an email address to send it to, and we're happy to answer questions from folks either on LinkedIn or at our email, which is hello@paren.app. And so we encourage your listeners and other folks to download it and dig in.
Well, thank you. And thanks for coming on here today. This has been great. I will put a link in the description of this video for people to go directly to your website where they can download the full report. Take a look at that report. It's super comprehensive. I still have to dive into it. Just the quick look that I look at was, you guys do a great job compiling fantastic data. The slides we showed today were just scratching the surface of this report that they put together. So thanks a lot. And hopefully I can have you on here again sometime soon, talk about state of the industry.
Fantastic. Great to see you.